Let's talk about the body shapes. There are 5 of them. We have the apples, the inverted triangles, the rectangles, the pears, and the hourglasses. It can be very easy for you to know which one are you if your body proportions are just very exaggerated. But if they're not, it might be a little bit harder for you. But you only have to do 2 things to know which one are you. The first thing would be to get a measuring tape and try to use the centimeters instead of the inches because they are just way more exact. And if I ever do like sewing videos, always use these centimeters, never inches. Inches are just kind of nonsensical when it comes to being accurate. What you have to do is to measure your shoulders, then your bust, then your waist, and finally your hips. Then you have to take a look at your proportions because even if measurements help, they are not everything. For example, if your largest measurement is your hips, but you actually have narrow hips because your volume sits on your bum, then you are not going to style yourself as a regular pear. And another very important thing is that you can be a combination of types. So you might be an hourglass, but you might also have broad shoulders. So you might be like, oh, I don't know if I'm an inverted triangle or if I'm an hourglass. You can be both. Do I really have to dress for my body shape? And you can do whatever you want to do. You don't always have to be super dressed up like I'm wearing a hoodie. It's in one of my colors, but still, it's shapeless. You might be wondering this because you might have come across the yin yang styling system, the Kitchener essences, or just the Kiwi body archetypes. And I don't recommend using one or the other. I recommend using both. I made a video about that. I think it was the latest one. And if it wasn't, it was the one before that. The overall idea of dressing for your body shape is to play around with visual weight to create balance. Originally, that balance would be an hourglass, but not everyone wants to look like an hourglass. And also, it shouldn't be that way, but body shapes are trends. So first we had the rectangles and the inverted triangle, the apples, the pears, the hourglasses. Now we're back to the pears. Who knows what's next? So that's why it's better to understand what's going to happen if you wear certain lines instead of just saying wear this if you want to look like an hourglass. Let's start with the apples. If you are an apple, then your visual volume is going to sit on your upper half. That could be your bust or your midsection or both. Please forget about the idea that all apples are plus-sized or all plus-size people are apples or ovals. Like, that has nothing to do with it. The only thing that matters to determine if you are actually an apple is your body proportions. And that would be if your midsection or your bust has more visual weight than your hips. Apples and inverted triangles get confused with each other because the visual volume of both of them is going to sit on the upper half. But you can try to see it as shoulders versus bust and midsection. Some apples might have broader shoulders, but still the bust is going to be the part with the most visual weight. If you are an inverted triangle, then your visual weight is going to sit on your shoulders. Having broad shoulders can be very common in some ethnicities, but having them doesn't always translate into being an inverted triangle. I did mention at the beginning that you might be a mix between 2 body shapes, and I gave the example of an hourglass with broad shoulders. A traditional hourglass is not going to have very strong shoulders, but also a traditional inverted triangle is not going to have such a defined waist. If you're a rectangle, then your visual weight is already evenly distributed. Your bust, hips, and waist are going to have very similar measurements. And your shoulders are going to be proportionate to the rest of your body. Both rectangles and hourglasses already have balanced bodies, but the difference is that the hourglasses have a narrow waist and the rectangles don't have a very defined waist. If you're an hourglass, then your body balance is already evenly distributed. Your bust and your hips are going to have very similar measurements, and you're also going to have a defined waist. It doesn't have to be super narrow, super exaggerated, but it's just going to be smaller. Not all hourglasses are going to be super curvaceous. If you are a pear, then your visual volume is going to sit on your hips. Notice that I did say hips and not just bottom half. And that's because your largest measurement might be your bottom half, But if your visual volume is in your bum instead of your hips, then you're going to style yourself differently. Let's talk about being plus size. When an apple gains weight, it's going to go to the bust and the midsection. Sometimes they don't gain fat on their legs like at all, and it becomes very apparent that they are an apple, but not always. When an inverted triangle gains weight, it can either be very even or it can go to the upper half. But still, the thing that you're going to notice the most about them is the shoulders. Both rectangles and hourglasses gain weight very evenly, but the difference might be that a rectangle might gain evenly, but the bum and the bust are not going to look like even more voluptuous than the rest of the body. When it's an hourglass, then they're going to gain weight evenly, but most of the fat is still going to go to the bust or bum area. This is part 2, so if you know what your body shape is, now we're going to talk about how to style yourself. But if you want me to do that for you, then you can go to cocostyling.com and hire me as your personal stylist. And if you want a discount, you can go to The Theory of Brown, sign up for the launch, and you're going to get an email with a secret discount code. I've said this a million times, but it's because it's very important. And it's that dressing for your body shape is about playing around with visual balance. That's why I still use the fruit system. You can play around with shapes, cuts, lines, fabrics, textures, colors. I'm going to give you an easy guide to it. This would be like what most fashion tips are based on when it comes to the fruit system. I'm going to read them because it's a list and I don't want to forget any of it. I match my nails to my case because I'll be reading a lot in this video. So. The first one is that light colors are going to reflect light, and that makes things look bigger. Then, the opposite of that is that dark colors absorb light. That makes things look smaller, kind of. So, you have probably heard that if you want to look slimmer, you're going to wear black. That's why. I used to wear black all the time, can you believe that? And if you want to stop wearing black all the time, you should find your color season. You can hire me to do it, or you can just look at this playlist and find out how to do it yourself. Then horizontal lines are going to widen things. Vertical lines are going to elongate things. If you do this, it's going to look wide. If you do this, it's going to look long. If you do this, it's going to look narrow and long. And if you do this, it's going to be open and wide. It might be easy to see it with like patterns or even necklines. Very featured items can emphasize things, and it can make something look wider or thinner depending on what you're doing. For example, if you have thin legs, if you wear very skinny jeans, then it's going to be apparent that you have thin legs. But if you have thicker legs, if you wear the same pair of jeans, it's going to be very apparent that you have thick legs. The same goes for baggy and flary items. If you want to add more visual weight to your bottom, then you can wear wider trousers. But if you want to tone down your curves, you can also do that. So then you start seeing that the same item is going to create different effects on different people. That's pretty much all you have to know to style your body shape. But I know it might be hard to visualize how that looks. Actually, one of my first videos was on that, and I did say like you can do whatever you want. It's just easier to know how to break the fashion rules once you know them. But I think it might be clear to just say, hey, this is what you can do to do this. That's one of the reasons why I made this one, because I don't want it to come across like you need to dress like an hourglass. It's just like know how to create a balanced look, and then you can break that. If you're an apple and you're going for a balanced look, what you want to do is to add more visual weight to your bottom half and then de-emphasize your midsection and your upper half. That can be a little bit tricky because most accent pieces are tops, but you're going to want to wear more detailed bottoms. Remember fitted versus flowy? What you want to do is to avoid adding too much clutter to your bust and your midsection. Something flowy can soften it and make it look more weightless, but you don't want to wear something super oversized because it's too much. If you want to emphasize your upper half, you want to wear your detailed pieces on top, but you don't want to pair them with something very simple at the bottom, because then even if you're going for top emphasis, it's going to look like there's way too much top emphasis. But not only that, but depending on your proportions, it can look like you literally cut your body in half. A great way to balance this would be wearing like a top that has some embellishments but in a darker color, and then wearing bottoms that are a little bit more flowy in maybe like an accent color, or it can be a darker color as well, but you don't want them to be like skinny jeans. And you can also accessorize and make things look a little bit more fun. If you're an inverted triangle and you're going for a balanced look, then what you want is to minimize your shoulder line, then define your waist, and then add more visual volume to your bottom half. We've already discussed on how to do that because it's very similar to apples. The difference is just like shoulders versus bust. Now this is the tip for my girls with broad shoulders. I have broad shoulders, I really like that. So if you do want to emphasize that, then you're going to wear things that are more embellished on the upper half, especially the shoulders. Of the shoulder necklines, sweetheart tops, like adding like this big chunky necklaces, all of that brings attention to your shoulder line. And if you want to go the extra step and just be very out there, you can literally add highlighter to your collarbones and then that makes it pop. But if you still want balance, then you want to pair that with bottoms that still have something to them. Again, no skinny jeans. If you are a rectangle and you're going for body balance, your body is already balanced, but what you might want to do is to define your waist. And depending on what you like, you can also add more visual weight to your bust and your hips. The easiest way to do that is to wear pieces that make the rest of your body look larger than your waist. If you don't want to emphasize or define your waist, that's alright. And actually, depending on your body structure or style essence, however you want to call it, it might be best if you don't do it at all, and just keeping your balance is enough. Then we have the hourglasses, and just like rectangles, they are already balanced, so you can choose to just keep it like that. As an hourglass, you can choose to maintain your visual balance, go for top emphasis or for bottom emphasis, and you can also minimize your curves if you don't want to emphasize anything. If you want to minimize your curves, what you have to do is to wear items that are not super form-fitting. They are more on the relaxed side. But something tricky about hourglasses is that if they don't follow their body outline, they can end up looking just like baggy and boxy. So you want to go for those relaxed items that are not oversized, but also not something that's very fitted. As a pair, if you're going for body balance, what you want to do is to minimize your lower half and then add more volume to your upper half. That's going to be easier for you because most accent pieces are tops, but then you have to sacrifice that because it's going to be very hard for you to find bottoms that fit your waist. You can also choose to emphasize your lower half while also highlighting your top by wearing something a little bit more form-fitting at the bottom and then wear a very detailed top. I haven't posted a video in a long time, but I have been posting on Instagram and TikTok, so if you want more tips, you can go there. And I'll also be posting small tips that don't need a whole video. I can just say it in like 1 minute, so you should go there. And if you want to hire me as your personal stylist, again, you can just go to cocostyling.com, get a discount at the Theory of Brown, and that'll be it. I'll be seeing you hopefully soon enough.